going to start by asking everyone to please check and make sure you're on mute because we're getting a lot of feedback. And to remind everyone that, thank you, to remind everyone that we are being recorded so that you're aware of that. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Senator Mary Darty Abrams, co-chair of the Public Health Committee. I'm glad to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces on our committee. I think that some people might look at what we're proposing today and what we will continue to propose in this committee as being a rather ambitious agenda. But I think that this committee's had a history of that because the work that we do is so very important. And we have all been elected to continue that work, and that is our intention. On Monday, we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King, and to paraphrase him, the time is always right to do what's right. So I wish us the very best as we move forward and work together to do the best we can for the people of Connecticut when it comes to public health. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Abrams, and I too look forward to a stimulating session for the Public Health Committee. Next, I'll turn to Representative Bill Pettit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We clearly do, even starting right off the bat, have an ambitious agenda, and there's many details to be discussed. I would start with a question in terms of where you wanted to, in the agenda to discuss ongoing policy, that is the nuts and bolts of public hearings in terms of timing and people signing up, and if you wanted to discuss those things before we got into the concepts, or in what part of the agenda we would discuss those issues. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Pettit. Indeed, we are going to get into those things after we get through opening remarks by chairs, rankings, and vice chairs. So absolutely, we want to level set that point. Senator Summers.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first official meeting of the Public Health Committee. I think to say that the agenda and the work of the Public Health Committee is ambitious is an understatement. There is a lot of very serious work that the Public Health Committee needs to do and is scheduled to do on a bipartisan area and method. Many of the concepts that we're going to discuss are, they don't belong to one party. Public health does not choose parties. It's not political. And I'm hoping that this committee will continue to see that as we move forward. And I'm looking forward to working with people that I've worked with before and all the new people on public health. So I'm interested to see what kind of dialogue that we will have, and looking forward mostly to the constructive work that this committee is always done on a bipartisan effort in a way that serves all of the people of the state of Connecticut. So I'm excited for us to get to work. I'm sure there will be some controversial debate here, but at the end, hopefully we will come out with the best public health policies for the people of the state of Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for those sentiments. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am excited to be one of the co-ranking senators on this committee. And I hope to bring a different perspective from many other committee work that I've done. And more than anything else, I think the theme of this Public Health Committee should be focused on finding solutions that are needed, particularly as it relates to the COVID. And I see right off the bat here that we've got a multitude of very controversial issues on board. And I hope to work closely with my fellow rankings and the chairs to be able to craft and draft language that is cognizant and respectful. Like I shared in the organizational meeting, we should not have any predestined ideas or goals, that we should listen to all the shareholders and respect the multitude of opinions. That being said, I know there's a consideration in regards to this COVID environment and this Zoom world that we live in. So I think we have to add an extra weight to respecting people's thoughts and input. And if anything else, if we did nothing but focus on COVID related issues in this committee, it would fill the table. And I would urge my leadership to consider that as we evaluate some of these concepts that may be extremely controversial, that perhaps maybe we should focus in on things that we are unified on, that has a better return on the quality of life that people in this COVID infected environment demand of us. So I'm eager to have this conversation, but I wish we would focus much more on addressing COVID related issues than some of the controversial ones that I know we're going to take up. So I'm eager to hear it, but I'm more excited about the fact that we are back into session and that people's voices will finally be heard again. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And I concur with you. I assure you, we will not shirk our responsibilities related to COVID-related legislation. We still have to this Friday if anybody has good ideas on that as well. And I should remind folks that many things that we presume are in the bailiwick of the Public Health Committee are often more squarely in other committees. So we will have that conversation, but recognize we will have to collaborate with other committees when it comes to many of the COVID initiatives we might undertake. Now on to our vice chairs, Representative Gilchrist. Or maybe not. Maybe
Hi,
so.
I'm so sorry. I'm working 2 meetings this morning, but hi, everyone. I'll just say quickly, I'm looking forward to working with everyone and being a part of this team. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Senator Anwar.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am looking forward to working with my colleagues, and I want to thank you and Senator Abrams for your leadership. Thank you.
Have I recognized everyone?
Senator Kushner, please.
Senator Kushner, my apologies, Senator.
Thank you. I am new to this committee and very honored to be a vice chair of the committee. I think the work that the Public Health Committee does is some of the most important work we do at state. And so I'm delighted to be here, anxious to learn from all of you, and really look forward to working with the co-chairs. I think you do a fabulous job. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Representative, before we move on, can I do some housekeeping for us?
I would love for you to do that.
Thank you. First of all, I've been asked to make sure that everyone's filled out their personal information form and turned it into our administrative assistant, Beverly Henry. So if you haven't done that already, please do so. It will just help us run this process better. I want to remind everyone that if we are to take any voice votes, the chair will give you some lead time to both get onto camera and unmute yourself. So you need to do both those things when we're about to take a voice vote. If we do take a roll call vote, again, you will need to be on camera. Please state your name and then your vote so that it can be properly recorded. In terms of leaving votes open, the new rules state that you have to be recorded. So the length of time we can leave the votes open so that we still have a recording happening, whether that's on YouTube or CTN, will be affected by that. So just so you know, you would still come into the same Zoom call. You would let the administrative assistant or whoever know that you're there and that you're voting, and it would be the same thing where you need to be on camera, state your name and your vote. And I think that's it. And I would just say to Representative Pettit's comments about upcoming public hearings, I think it was a good point to bring up. But also we have another committee meeting planned before we would have any public hearings. And I know that there's still things that are being worked out. We want to make sure that we give everybody the right information. So we want you to know that before we begin a public hearing, we will have very clear information about how that will be done. So if not, if we can't answer all the questions today, certainly we can start to begin to hear them and answer them in our next meeting. And the last thing I would say is, Representative Steinberg, I would like to make a motion when appropriate that we start a consent calendar. Representative Steinberg, you're on mute.
Someday I'll figure all this out. I thought I could hit the space bar and it would actually do it, but it doesn't. Do I have a second to the motion to create a consent calendar?
This is Senator Anwar, second.
I see a note from Senator Summers saying that people are having difficulty raising their hands. I want to push everybody to the participants window. Please open that window. If you go down to the bottom left, there's a nice blue handprint where it says raised hand. I'd like everybody to try to use raise hand when they want to speak. We have a second on the motion to create a consent calendar. We can do I suppose, a voice vote. Or actually, let me ask it this way. Does anyone object to the creation of a consent calendar? I see Representative Jenga.
Representative Jenga, you were on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. That was an error. I apologize.
Well, thank you for testing the raise hand function for all of us, Representative. Seeing no objections, I'll give you one last chance. Any objections to the creation of a consent calendar? Seeing none, we will create a consent calendar. Madam Administrator, please see to that. I do want to get back to Representative Pettit to make sure that we address the concerns that he wanted us to address up front.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the specific issues about how long there will be a sign up for testimony. Some of the big bills, the vaccine bill last year, we had a deluge of people signing up and heard testimony for 22 and a half or 24 hours. And secondly, whether there'll be, when we're in the LOB, where people are able to look at a list and say, oh, I'm 75th down the list and can make an estimate. Will we have the ability to put people into queues of 5 or 10 and get people that information by text, phone, or whatever way, saying you're 100 away. We think it might be about this time based on 3 minutes of speaker or whatever. So people don't necessarily have to sit for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours wondering where their place in line is going to be. Just sort of the details, nuts and bolts, which I know is complicated.
Those are all excellent points, Representative. And in fact, these are issues that chairs and rankings have been struggling with across all committees. We will have a registration process which will be similar to what we do when we meet in person in the LOB. It will open in the morning typically, and will be open for a period of hours. Obviously, we can't leave the registration process open indefinitely. So at some point around the beginning of the meeting, we will have to close down registration for that. We need to get back to you with precise specifics on how that's going to work when we approach the first public hearing. We will get that clarified. We're also going to be in consultation with our LCOs and with leadership to make sure that our interpretation of the rules that have been negotiated are reflected in the way that we conduct business in public hearings. So I haven't given you definitive answers. Senator Abrams, you have a comment?
Yes, I was just going to say, I think if she would, I would like to ask Beverly Henry if she could explain her understanding of how the public hearing is going to work, at least at this point. And again, if anybody has additional questions about that, I appreciate your remarks, Representative Pettit, and we'll make sure that we're able to answer those questions. And if anyone thinks of anything else, please don't hesitate to reach out. And like I said, we can continue the discussion in our next meeting as well. But Beverly, if you would like to make some comments about how the public hearings will run.
Currently, we have a process in place where the registration will be done online because we cannot do it in the building. So we will give the official 5 days notice with the bulletin, and we'll have a deadline for testimony and registration to be done. The more controversial bills, I will ask that we have more than 5 days so we can accommodate the groups, because we have a few controversial bills that we will be hearing, I believe, and for those bills, we will give like 7 days or 6 days notice, so we can cut it off like a day before, so we can publish the testimony and approve the registration. The notification for attendees for the hearing, people coming in to testify. The day before the hearing, by midday or by 5, there will be a speaker registration list published on the public health webpage, where the individuals who register to testify, they can see where their name is at, and they can follow via YouTube and Zoom and get an understanding. And I would ask the chairs to make an announcement to say, we're currently hearing speaker number 75. So the person who is 100 or 80 will be able to estimate the 3 minutes and have an idea when they will come on. We will also have attendees or the folks signing up to testify in a waiting room, and we will move them from the status of attendee to participant and bring them into the hearing room where they'll be able to speak. Once they're done speaking, they'll be removed from the room and they can follow the hearing via YouTube Live or Zoom. So that information will also be published, and they'll have an understanding that that's how the hearing will go.
Thank you, Beverly. Dr. Pettit, does that cover your questions?
Just a clarification, Mr. Chairman. The 5 days Mrs. Henry's referring to may be extended to 7. Is that just notice for the meeting, or will there be an extended time for sign up, since we don't know how efficient will be? Presumably you might be more efficient with a computer point of view, and much like the vaccine program, if someone can't sign up online, will they be able to call to sign up, or will they need to get someone who can do the computer sign up for them? Will it be an alternative to signing up by computer?
We're also going to be giving people the opportunity who do not own a smartphone or a computer to be able to testify by phone. And the process for that is that we will have them call into one of the numbers in the Public Health Committee, leave their name, information, and then one of the staff members will get back to them. We will register them, and the day of the hearing, we will communicate with them via phone, so they'll have an understanding as to what time they're going to testify.
Thank you.
The 7 days that I talk about is the notice in the bulletin. We have to close registration a certain time, because there's a lot of work in the back end that we have to do that we cannot do the day of the hearing or the night before the hearing.
Thank you.
That's why I believe for controversial bills, I'll do a 7 day notice to make sure we capture everyone.
That sounds reasonable. Representative Cook, followed by Representative Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just questioning, and I recognize that this is an endeavor upon its own, trying to take on some of these topics, especially recognizing that we have sat 24 hours in a public hearing in the last legislative session. So do we have the ability via Zoom to split the committee? So instead of listening to 24 hours worth of testimony, hypothetically, we can split our committee and listen to 12 hours, and the other half of the committee could listen to 12 hours, which I know we have the ability to do. We have not taken advantage of that in this committee, but I would just offer that might be something we look at in respect to everybody's time, not only those of us who are on multi-committees, obviously, and have to listen to that, but also, more importantly, respect of the time of the residents of the state of Connecticut that want to have their voices heard. Just for consideration.
That's a very interesting concept, Representative. I've never heard of that before. I will say that we've had a number of emails from constituents here in the state of Connecticut who are concerned about being heard by the committee. And there's always the risk that if we split it up, that they're going to feel as if they really haven't reached everyone. But it's certainly something we can talk about further. This committee knows what it's like to go through a 21-hour hearing. And if I can make any hearing shorter while still respecting the necessity of offering citizens an opportunity to weigh in, I will remain open-minded. Let's discuss it further. Representative Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I also wanted to support what Representative Cook did, suggested right now, because a number of us have sat on Appropriations Committee, for example, where there's been very, very lengthy and large turnouts of people to testify. We did split up into 2 different rooms. It was much more efficient, and it really cut the time basically in half. And I would give very strong recommendation for the committee to take a look at that as a means of trying to not keep people up for an excessive number of hours going into the meeting, because obviously, once you get past 10 p.m., that's a lot of time. The other question I have really pertains to people who want to sign up after the public hearing has started and the sign-up sheet has been taken away. Are they unable to be able to sign up later on? Because at the end of some of the meetings we all been in, the chairs usually say, is there anybody else who would like to testify? So I'm trying to get a clarification as to whether people can sign up once the sign-up sheet has been taken down.
I'll yield to Beverly on that point.
I'll have to check with the group that worked on the platform and to see if that can be done. We never talked about that.
Thank you. And I wonder, Mr. Chairman, if you could comment on what Representative Cook had suggested. And you can ask any number of legislators, but I think most of us who've gone through this have found it very efficient and certainly gives the public greater access to not only testifying, but testifying at a reasonable hour.
I'm all in favor of that. I think that we'll give it some consideration and we will report back to the committee forthwith. But thank you for that concept. It may actually make it possible for us to give everybody their chance to speak and not have to be at 3 in the morning. Representative Carpino, followed by Representative Dauphiné.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a formatting question. Traditionally, constituents who don't have the time to wait 21 or 22 hours to testify will send over paper testimony. With today's new technology that we're utilizing, is there any prohibition of them sending over a 3-minute video clip of themselves to be distributed to the committee?
Well, we're just full of really interesting ideas today. I've yet to see videos submitted. I don't know whether that's been contemplated, anticipated in the rules, but certainly, the presumption is that the person is speaking on behalf of themselves rather than, I use the word canned to that point. But if we are accepting written testimony as a normal course of action, one would argue in the age of new technology, why not a video, which would allow somebody to really put their sort of their personality and their enthusiasm behind what they're saying. I think that's another interesting idea that we ought to explore. Sounds like we have some exploring to do. Representative Dauphiné, followed by Senator Anwar.
Representative, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted you to clarify the 7 days that we were talking about registering. Is that 7 days that people will have an opportunity to register to testify? Could you clarify that?
Beverly?
The 7 days is for the notice in the bulletin. There'll still be a deadline for folks to submit their testimony and to register. So instead of doing 5 days, for example, if there's a weekend, I would extend that so people would be able to know that, to recognize the bulletin is out and to be able to register and submit their testimony. We're not extending the time to 7 days for registration. It's just the notice. There'll still be like a 5-day notice or a 6-day, but people will have the notice long enough to be able to register.
So my question, I'm sorry, you're saying long enough, but it's very different doing this virtually. We have many families at home that are working from home via their internet, children that are doing virtual learning. Parents and families are really concerned they're not going to be able to get in on line to even register in the time frame. So they're very concerned about having enough time to get on and register. The other concern they're having is that they may get online to testify and may lose their internet because they have several family members online. So these are a lot of the concerns that I'm hearing from families that are reaching out. Can you speak to that?
I won't be able to change the rule. The rule requires 5 days notice. And like some of the bills we're going to be hearing, they're controversial, like I said earlier. And it is my hope and plan to put the notice out for 7 days, but we cannot have registration on the day of the hearing. And
okay.
It might seem,
clarify though, if it's not going to be on the day of the hearing, how much time will they have to register?
they will have 5 to 6 days.
Okay, that will be the registration period. Okay, and what are the provisions that you are going to use when somebody tries to get on to do their testimony when it's their turn and they're not able to get on because of overuse of internet in their home? I mean, some of that is going to be, I think, difficult for some people who have children that are virtually doing school and others that are working from home.
I am not sure how we will do that.
I think we need to explore ways that if somebody misses their turn, that they can be recognized. There may need to be some sort of parallel process for people to communicate that. We'll have to look at it further. Bev, is there any distinction of meaningfulness between registration and testifying, or are we talking the same thing?
It's the same thing. They're registering to testify. They don't register to watch the hearing. They register to testify like they would come in. It's similar to what we do in the past, where they come into the building, they sign up. So it's the sign up is what we're calling the registration. They're registering to speak. There's a conversation going on that we would have a Google line, so folks could call in. There is no definitive process that's in place as yet, but we'll do our best to accommodate the folks who would like to call in, other than those registering for phone.
So can you clarify, there's going to be 5 days to register to do testimony, correct?
The bulletin, the rules require 5 days notice. So if we're doing a hearings on a controversial bill, I will do my best to have the hearing notified more than 5 days, up to 7 days. So the individuals or the people who wants to testify on that bill, they'll have enough time, because we're now virtual. They're not seeing stuff like coming in the building and getting notification by their advocates, or I don't know how they find out about the hearings. So for controversial bills that I know a lot of legislators and members of the public are interested in, we'll do our best to give them ample time to register. So I cannot give you a definitive answer that yes, I will be given 5 or 7 days. I'll put the notice out as best as I can for 7 days. But the rule requires 5.
For the representative's benefit, just to clarify, when would you imagine, relative to the beginning of the public hearing, that registration would open, particularly for these controversial bills? In other words, when would the people be able to go online and actually first do the registration?
Well, are you talking to me, Doctor?
Actually, I was hoping to represent your question. Maybe I got it wrong, but I don't know if you've got a definitive answer as to when registration would open for a specific bill.
I don't know. I'm thinking several hours at least will be needed. And if she's saying they're going to have 5 to 7 days, that would be certainly ample time, I would believe. But again, I'm talking about the challenges that many of the people from home are going to have, be it no internet service, or too many people on at one time, or special needs children are now at home and parents are caring for them. They're going to be interrupted by that. I've heard from many families who are very concerned about their opportunity to get on and to be able to testify. Last time we had almost 5,000 people show up at the LOB, and it was almost a 24-hour hearing. So I'm expecting that will be repeated, if not more. So I guess I'm looking for some opportunity that all of these families will have an opportunity to have, you know, an opportunity to testify. It's going to be very different, virtual versus being there in person. So
I take your point, Representative. Obviously, this is not ideal. One could argue on one hand, though, that the ability to testify online or via the phone is actually easier than spending 20 hours at the Capitol with your young kids overnight. So it's not perfect. And we will take your point and see if we can give you, first of all, clarity on when registration would open and close. And perhaps we can come up with some sort of remedy that would avail somebody who missed their turn or was struggling to get on the call in a timely fashion to still be recognized and given an opportunity to testify before we conclude the public hearing. You have my word, we'll look into see within the context of the rules what we can actually do. Moving along, if that, okay, Representative Delphine, I will recognize Senator Anwar, followed by Senator Summers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of observations that I think it's worthy to share. In the historical way we were having people sign up, people would actually have to at times come over to the Capitol. And one can make an argument that they did not have a car or they did not have a bus or service, and it was difficult to be able to come and sign up their names at a specific time. I think this is giving an opportunity for people to be able to sign up, technologically, you can, anybody who has access to any computer, whether it's a public or a private, and at any time they would have that opportunity to sign up, and the timing of that sign up is early enough that this actually is giving more opportunities for people to have access. So I think if you look at it with a clear understanding, this is much more transparent and open than what was there before, because people would have to physically come in and at times had to have somebody sign up their names with the handwritten notes and so on, if you recall many of the times that was done. That's one part I want to make sure that I share my observation on this. The second part I want to talk about is that, look, these bills that we are looking at are for the state of Connecticut. And in the past, what I had noticed was that people who were coming from New York, New Jersey, and they were brought in by some groups. And if we were looking at a bill for New York and New Jersey, I would love to listen to that. But if it's a Connecticut-based bill, which is going to impact our community, it's worthy to just try and see if we can focus on people and assure that the Connecticut people are not being given a backseat when people from out of state or other parts of the country, because technology can do that, and we want to make sure we protect our citizens. So I wanted to just put that question for the leadership to look at. Thank you again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And you raise a good point. The Zoom system is not ideal, but one could argue that our longstanding traditional in-person testimony system is not ideal either. And we are definitely looking at trade-offs. But I submit with the difficulties, we and the public will struggle through and try to do the business of the state of Connecticut. With regard to your second point, again, I have to be cognizant of the rules as we have them currently. I'm glad to discuss. I'll leave it at that. It sounds like we're going to do a little offline conversation about how we can facilitate Connecticut voters and residents have their voices heard. We've had conversations about whether we could ask people whether they reside in the state of Connecticut. That's an additional complication in the whole process. And we're not exactly clear what we do. We identify somebody who's from New Jersey, Massachusetts, or California. But to your point, it is in our interest that we hear from the people of the state of Connecticut first and foremost, though we have to acknowledge there may be people with some level of expertise or experience who may actually reside in other states. Senator Summers.
Yes, good morning. Just to reiterate some of the other things that have been said today, I think that there is arguments on both sides. Some people will believe that this is giving greater access to be able to weigh in, And some do not agree with that. Our citizens do have the right under our Constitution to come in and air their regresses or their grievances with us personally. It makes it difficult under the conditions that we are in, but those are the rules that were voted on by the caucuses, whether we agreed with them or not. That's why there is, I think, validity to deciding as a committee what bills we hear. And those that are more controversial are going to add another level of this whole conversation about whether it is easier or is not as easy, etc. So that is one of my big concerns, hearing bills that we have heard before that have ignited great controversy in a virtual session. And that being said, I just would like everybody on the committee to know that this morning I received, and I think it was sent to all the chairs, as far as I've been told, because it said that on the email, a petition of nearly 10,000 Connecticut residents asking to not hear bills in this session that are controversial, specifically the one on vaccines in this session. 10,000 Connecticut citizens and addresses have signed this petition, and I believe that it's going to continue. So that just gives you a perspective on what we're doing and how this virtual session is being received by citizens of Connecticut. So for what it's worth, I want to make sure everybody knows that. I know it was sent to all the chairs because I just happened to get it this morning. And I'm sure that we will send it to everybody on the committee and they can take a look at it. But I don't think that there's a perfect solution, but I do think that the committee should really consider what bills we want to bring forward, due to the fact that regardless of what we think, there will be people that feel very disenfranchised from the session and the way that we have to pursue it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I take your point very seriously. We've all received emails. I make a point of trying to read every one. Certainly when a number of people express concern about a particular bill, we should take that into account. I will say, though, that we had an election in November, and people knew the people they were electing were going to be probably trying to legislate under a pandemic. And we've already sacrificed an entire year of doing business to the virus. And I would submit we cannot continue indefinitely to postpone the state's business, even on controversial bills. Because of this, we need to manage as well as we can. And it's been a remarkable story of heroes, not just on the front lines of healthcare and essential workers, but also many people in government who have really stepped up to the plate and done the best they could under very challenging circumstances to keep the government going forward. Many people I've heard from both sides of the aisle have been arguing that the legislature needs to assert its appropriate prerogatives to do business. And I would argue that by doing our business within the constraints, even taking on controversial bills, is exactly what we were elected to do. And I intend, and I know Senator Abrams agrees with me, this is the basis on which we will go forward. Representative Tersiak.
Thank you very much. To speak on controversial bills or not, at first, the idea of let's not do controversial bills, I'm thinking to myself, well, that makes sense. That's pretty good. But then the example was a vaccine bill. I don't see that as controversial. I was certain that the example was going to be Aiden dying. And I know there are very many people who don't see that as controversial. We'll have a very short list and even shorter meetings if we don't do things for fear that there's somebody who can voice their concern that it's controversial. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Dauphiné.
With all due respect, Representative, I would say that with almost 5,000 people showing up at the LOB last February and almost a 24-hour hearing with 88% of the people voicing their concern about taking away the religious exemption, I would argue that that's very controversial. And now we have a petition with 10,000 people that are speaking out to saying, we don't want this to be heard virtually. We want an opportunity to have a fair hearing. And I guess my question is, what is the committee looking for? What more do you want to hear from the people when 88% of the people spoke out and said, do not take our religious exemption freedom away? So I would argue that it is very controversial. And so what is this committee looking to hear this time that they didn't hear last February?
Representative, I take your comments seriously, and there's no doubt that we have more than one controversial bill this year, as we've had in the past. And the history of this legislature and virtually every legislature is such that bills come up over a period of years. Public opinions change. I would submit that the testimony of some people and a petition may not, and in my view, probably does not represent the opinion of the majority of the people of the state of Connecticut. So while we take all that testimony very seriously, this is not a popularity contest where we look who's raising hands. We consider everyone's testimony on the merits, and then we do what we think is best. And the majority rules in this case, and we'll see how that turns out. We'll see how the votes turn out. We'll look at the bills themselves and determine whether or not this committee feels they're worthy to go to the floor of the legislature and to be voted on and then signed by the governor. This is our process. And the process involves controversial bills in which people are entitled and encouraged to express their opinions. Whether or not they represent a majority of any particular point of view is probably less important than the merit of their arguments. With that, I turn to Representative Cook, followed by Representative Zupkis.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman, for the second time. Two things on this. First and foremost, we are building in theory for the people, by the people, of the people, and all people have the right to be heard. Ideally, I don't like sitting in public hearings for 24 hours either. But at the end of the day, we did not get elected to make easy decisions and take an easy way out. I would rather not sit here myself for 24 hours and listen to anything. Doesn't mean I have to support it when it comes down for a vote, but out of respect, I believe everybody has the right to be heard. On the second part of that, I also believe that we have the ability to mainstream or streamline this process a tad bit as legislators to not testify on legislation. I would hope, or for consideration with our chairs and our ranking members, that we look at, if legislators want to testify, do that at the very end, or submit video testimony, but do not take up time for the general public at the beginning and utilize that time that's so vitally important for the rest of the residents of the state of Connecticut, just for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Point taken. Representative Zupkis, followed by Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to piggyback off of Representative Cook, I agree. And I think even commissioners and anybody with the state should be at the end and let the people's voices be heard. I will sit here for 37 hours and listen because I believe it is important that everybody has the right to testify. I don't like the way that it is virtual. I think it is going to be a hindrance for people to testify. It is what it is. However, to that point, I do not believe that those I'll say two controversial bills, in my opinion, vaccinations and assisted suicide, should be heard, because I don't believe we're going to be able to get the gist from the people that are testifying. We all know in person, we're able to talk it out better. We were on Zoom. Look at the issues we have when we go into session and voting. So I think it is going to be a huge problem, and that we should be, the important work of this committee is to work on COVID related issues, especially during this time. I believe Senator Huang said it, there's enough to keep us busy during that. So I believe we should not discuss, especially those two bills, until we can accurately hear from everybody, whether we disagree or not, that everybody can be heard. Personally, I don't think it's true, because the history shows that there are thousands of people that are going to testify. And I find it's going to be very difficult and not fair to the people of Connecticut, especially on those two bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I should clarify one point. When we're talking about that first hour, one of the reasons we afford elected officials the opportunity to speak first is we recognize, as busy as every citizen in the state may be, and even more so under COVID, that typically commissioners and other people in high rank have very busy schedules and limited time, and we afford them the opportunity of virtual certainty as to the time that they'll be able to testify, because we want to hear from what we deem to be the experts, oftentimes the proponents of those specific bills. So, we will generally discourage run-of-the-mill legislators, unless they're proponents of a specific bill, from testifying in that first hour. But I think we do have to afford an opportunity for agency commissioners and other people, perhaps somebody we brought in from out of town for expertise, get that opportunity in that first hour. But I take that point very seriously.
If I may, please, Chairman, what I would just say to that is, I know even sitting in committee hearings, public hearings, when I'm in Hartford, I always want to ask the commissioners and these people questions after I've heard the public, and I never am afforded that. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. So to me, it's very important actually to flip it. And even though everybody's busy, whether you're a commissioner, a legislator, or the general public, I think it's our duty as legislators to afford the general public first before anybody else. My opinion. Thank you.
You know, Representative, I can see both sides of it. I personally believe that when we allow the quote unquote experts to speak first, they're likely to anticipate a large number of the questions that would otherwise be asked people with less expertise. And the idea of having to wait 4, 8, 10, 24 hours to hear from those folks who might have clarified the situation from the get-go, I could argue that there is a justification to having them go first to sort of level set the context of the bill and to anticipate questions. They do a job well. They anticipate the questions that we legislators would often ask, but certainly by no means all of them. Well, very shortly, we may actually discuss some of these controversial bills, but we still have Representative Foster.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, Representative Steinberg or Chairman Steinberg. I want to just take a moment, and I believe that this is important as we're having these conversations and we talk about things like vaccines being controversial or having controversial conversations about things related to vaccines. It's really important that we have read and understand the reasons why vaccines are perceived as controversial, because I believe that we are doing a disservice to public health as a community if we say that vaccines in and of themselves are controversial, when the main criticism is not that people don't have confidence in the science of vaccines. The main criticism is that people believe that it is a religious freedom issue that they're concerned about. And in a time of a global pandemic, I would just caution my colleagues to please not do anything that is a disservice to the confidence in our very advanced scientific system in using language that suggests that people aren't confident in the efficacy and science behind vaccinations, because that is not true. And we rely wholeheartedly on confidence in vaccines for us to be able to battle this pandemic that we're facing as a nation. And so I just ask, and I plead with you as my colleagues to please be judicious about the language that you're using related to vaccine confidence, because I think that if you are listening and hearing and reading the emails that I'm sure we're all getting, it is not a vaccine confidence issue for the vast majority of people. It is about the language of the bill and how they believe that that is related to. And I think that that is honestly the strongest partisan difference that we see across party aisles, is about responsibility of local versus state. And that's a great debate to have, a great discussion for us to have. But there's a resounding amount of scientific evidence about the efficacy of vaccines. And there's also a very strong body of scientific evidence in public support and confidence in the efficacy of vaccines. And if we undermine what is scientifically evident in our political discussions, we do a disservice to the community. And as elected officials, I think we just need to and should be judicious about the language that we choose to use. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Representative. I'm actually quite confident that this committee will be exemplars of appropriate behavior and language. It's very important that we show the people of Connecticut that we are, to the degree we can, be evidence-based and really focus in on facts. There will be a lot of opinion and commentary and supposition and maybe even allegation. It's our obligation to sift through those things and see if we can find our ways to the best ways to actually solve problems. So I take your point, Representative, and I hope that we all choose this as an opportunity to show our constituents that we can argue about difficult subjects in a civil and constructive fashion. Let's hope that's the case. And that's just a perfect segue, if we're done with questions, to actually talking about what's on the agenda today. So I think without further ado, we might move to item 3 on the agenda, which are raised bills.
Muted, Mr. Chairman.
What was that, Representative?
You were muted.
You're muted, sir.
Oh, eventually I'll figure all this out. I've only got two hands, and I think I need to be an octopus sometimes. All right, moving along to item 3 on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is an act concerning immunizations. Now, many of the people on the committee have been on the committee before, but for the benefit of those new to the committee and for those watching from the public, I'm going to take a minute or two to review some of these bills, just to be clear that we're all on the same page. An act concerning immunizations is dealing with the removal of non-medical exemptions for children to attend public school. In other words, currently there is a religious exemption in statute, which allows people for religious or philosophical reasons not to immunize their children. And the bill has the intent of protecting the public, and particularly children who may not be eligible for vaccinations due to autoimmune conditions and the like, or in areas where the immunizations rate fall below what is generally accepted to be a reasonable standard for herd immunity, roughly 95%, that by addressing this, by removing the non-medical exemption, focusing on a robust and clear medical exemption with appropriate oversight, and the bill that we left off with some grandfathering, which is something we will discuss further, would be the best way to protect the public health. I will say that there have been some talk we raised in our organizational meeting about bringing this bill forward within the next week if it is passed for being raised. We are going to take it a little slower than that because we want to afford everybody the opportunity to become familiar with the bill as proposed, and that the bill we would bring forward for a public hearing would accurately reflect our expectations for the bill that we would want to pass out of committee. So we're just going to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that. We want to hear from everyone, but that when we schedule a public hearing, the bill that is in the public hearing will materially represent the bill we intend to pass on the floor should it pass out of committee. So I see that we have some hands up, but before we do that, I'm going to ask, do we have a motion to raise as a concept?
I thought, Representative Steinberg, I thought we were going to place this on hold for now, the vaccine bill, and come back to it when we do have a more, a stronger idea of what it is the bill is going to be, and that we wouldn't be voting on this today.
I'm okay with that. I also thought we would raise the bill and just postpone the hearing until such time as we had the chance to get to that point. Why don't we hear from the public, from our colleagues first, and then we'll come back to that. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate Chairman Abrams' comments, is the fact that I know in our screening conversation, there was a conversation in regards to the previous year's bill with language and a much more clearly defined explanation of what the intent of the bill was about. And I must share with you, when I saw the agenda, when it said immunization, we obviously in the committee knows what the issue is about, but there are so many other people that may just look at it for the first time and have no real clear understanding of it. And I agree with Chairman Abrams, the fact that perhaps we should offer language, offer a substantive analysis for people to understand what they're voting to raise as a concept. Literally, as I shared earlier, we have spent almost 45 minutes debating this issue. I was thinking we may be breaking a new record for raising concept meetings when we raise these controversial issues. So I would ask for us to hold this issue till there's better clarification of what the specifics that the chairs are looking to raise, to give everybody an opportunity and really reinforce the concept we talked so much about earlier of during these difficult COVID times and during Zoom to offer transparency and give people an opportunity to know exactly what they're spending their time and articulating the debate about. So thank you, Senator Abrams, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Since you are new to the committee and we have others who are new to committee, since it's our intent, and we will be more explicit and make sure everybody has a copy of the bill, but you might want to look back at last year's summary, which will, I think, very well describe the bill's intent, to your point. That has really not changed, even with some fine tuning here or there. The bill is materially the same as we were talking about a year ago. We owe everybody the opportunity to see that with their own eyes, but it might be a good idea for everybody new to the committee, or even for people who are not new to the committee, to refresh their memories about the bill language, both in terms of the explicit language, but also in terms of the summaries that we afford legislators and the public. It would bring you up to speed very quickly. Senator Summers, followed by Representative Tersiak.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, we will be holding this bill. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to double check that. So we will be holding this bill and not be voting on it today.
I'd like to hear from the other members first before we come to that conclusion, and I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Senator Summers, followed by Representative Tersiak.
Yes, thank you. As you know, we heard a bill last year that had an amendment put on it at the last minute for grandfathering. And when we were in screening, I thought I heard you say that that was going to be the language that we were going to bring forward. And that's why I was surprised. And I sent you guys an email that we were raising it as a concept. So you are saying that it is a concept bill, but the language will be identical, similar to what we had seen last year, or we're not sure yet. So when we do raise this, we will be raising it with language that we can all see. That's to hopefully. And then on top of that, to Representative Foster's point, there's been a lot of controversy even on the name of this bill, an act concerning vaccines. You know, we're going to mandate vaccines. Vaccines are already mandated to go to school. This is not what this bill is about. This bill is about removing a religious exemption concerning vaccines. So I think that we should consider making the title appropriate so that we're not, there's this image or this concept that vaccines are not mandated to go to school, which is absolutely not the case. So I think we have to be very clear in the title of whatever bill it is that we bring forward. So that is a suggestion also. When you change the title from, last year it was an act concerning vaccinations, then it was mandating vaccines, and now it's an act concerning immunizations. It creates a little bit of confusion. And I think that the public should know that it is required to be vaccinated to go to school. What we're talking about really is removing, not a non-medical, that's not what it's called. It's called a religious exemption. So I think we should be clear for the public and for people that want to come testify on exactly what we're talking about. And I don't want people to have the impression that vaccines are not mandated, because they are. So that's just a suggestion. And I'm glad that we will be hearing a specific bill with language that people can come in and testify on. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And to your point, if we're going to be coming back to you with something with language, I think we can work on the title as well. Though I would submit that based upon the emails I've received, the general public is very well aware as to the intent of this bill and has been aware and energized by it in one fashion or another for some time. So I'm less concerned than you are that people might misinterpret what this bill is about. But I take your point, particularly under the context of COVID, that people could conceivably conflate the two issues. And it is certainly important for us not to have that confusion persist for any longer than we can. So I take your point. Representative, go ahead.
Can I follow up with that? And that's one of my big points, is that there is a fear, whether it be rightful or wrong, concerning the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic. And when something is titled mandating vaccines, it creates controversy because people automatically jump to, oh my God, they're going to mandate the COVID vaccine. And so I think it would be intentional, and it would be a consideration that I think would be better received if we could make sure the title reflected exactly what the bill was going to do. That's all. Thank you.
Point taken. Representative Terziak, followed by Representative D'Amico.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to agree with the comments from the House Chair, and not just because he's the House Chair and I'm a House member, although I do hope it'll pay off someday. But I would like to just remind us that this is about raising concepts. This is specifically, by definition, not about raising bills that are entirely written. Raising concepts has an earlier deadline than raising bills. We can't even propose a bill to vote on unless it's cleared the hurdle of, let's say, as a concept, that this is something we want to discuss. And that's all. So again, this is raising concepts. If we don't like them, we should vote them down. If we're that certain that we don't need to hear anything. And I don't know how we decide which bills are going to be too controversial or too unreasonable ideas that they don't make it onto the list. But if we do, this nurse would like to see us not allow medical assistants to administer vaccines. It's a huge difference. Okay. Thank you very much.
We will get to that in good time, Representative. Maybe not good time at the rate we're going. Representative D'Amico, followed by Representative Linehan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to echo the remarks of my colleague, Representative Terziak, with regards to what we are charged to do here at this meeting. We are not voting in favor of bills or against bills. We're not even here to debate bills. There's plenty of time to debate the bills. Right now, we are here to give permission to the chairs and the screening committee, composed of ranking members as well, to go forward and to produce a bill. And my understanding is it's the tradition of the legislature to give latitude and deference to the chairs and the ranking members to come up with their best efforts to produce a bill. And that's all we're supposed to be doing here today, is to say we want to go forward with a bill on this topic, and we give deference to the chairs and the ranking members to produce that bill. That's all we're here to do today. We're not here to debate the merits of bills or concepts. And I think we're getting a little too far afield. So I'm fully in favor of raising this bill, and then with plenty of time later on in the process to debate the merits of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Linehan.
Mr. Chairman, I too am Representative D'Amico and Representative Terziak, but I also want to throw this out there. I offer you this. Prior to this discussion on even raising the bill, the concerns were, or raising the concept, the concerns were that there wouldn't be enough time for individuals to possibly let feelings be known. So any delay that we give as this committee to bring up a concept or bill and start the discussion is a delay that is not in favor of those thoughts of the representatives who wanted to have more time for discussion and give the public more time to give their opinions. The further we delay bringing up any concept or bill will further delay discussions that we have. So I agree with my colleagues, and I would certainly like to see this bill voted on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative McCarty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and please forgive me. I don't mean to delay the meeting any longer, but I do feel that I have to voice my concerns. I listened to all my colleagues earlier. I should have spoken up earlier. I do have some concerns about the process and how we're moving forward. We've heard and just received the petition today with over 10,000 members in our public that are concerned. So if you could just clarify for me, because I'm hearing two accounts, that this committee will have ample opportunity to work on the language of the bill and listening to the public. There could be new recommendations that we could come to. I'm hearing that the bill being discussed is the same bill as last time. And I think we can all agree that during the pandemic, we've learned so much, even about our learning environments, that I think we would have to incorporate into the bill. So I have some suggestions that I would like to have the confirmation that that what we're voting on, if we're voting on a concept today, and we can see that this has caused a lot of consternation right within our own committee, that there will be ample opportunity to work on the language of the bill. Could you just clarify that for me? Because I'm hearing that it's the same bill, then I'm hearing that it's just the concept. And so I would just like to have clarification.
Very good point, Representative. And let's be as clear as we could be. We believed that given the attention this bill has received, that virtually everybody knew what we were talking about with regard to the intent of the bill. I assure you the intent of the bill will not change. When we talked about a concept, we owed you all the clarification that what we were intending to bring forward for discussion before a public hearing would be materially the same as the bill that was passed out of committee and was on the floor of the House when the session came to an end last year. We are in conversation about some fine tuning of that, some conversation about some of the elements, particularly elements that took place that were different from the original bill that was brought forward last year. So that when we have a public hearing, both everybody on the committee and the public is aware of the framework, the basis, and most of the specific language that we intend to move forward with. But to your point, Representative, we always use the public hearing process to vet the merits of bills, the clarity of the language, the potential consequences, and also, very importantly, to hear from people who may have good ideas, ways to change things. I encourage you, if you have thoughts that you think would bring this forward in a constructive way, we always want to learn from our experience. And this past year has taught us many things, for better, for worse. And I should also remind everybody, after we have the public hearing, we also have a committee meeting to discuss passing a bill out of committee, at which time we are afforded another opportunity for an extended conversation on the merits of the bill, our concerns, our suggestions for improvement. There might even be changes subsequent to that if we come up with some good ideas. But this is the process, for better, for worse. This is how we make the sausage. So I apologize for everybody if by raising a concept bill today, we created any confusion. And it is our intent to bring this bill back before the committee. We'll hold it today. If not by our Friday meeting, and I should add that everybody should be aware that we will have a 9 o'clock meeting this Friday, that it would certainly be something we'd come back to the committee to raise as a raised bill by next week. That's the expectation. So you have really great ideas and you want to weigh in, let us know about them now, because we're going to come back to you with a bill you'll have a chance to review and share with constituents and highlight what will be the basis for conversation in the public hearing. We want to, because this bill is of interest to so many folks, be as clear as possible, and that's why we'll hold this bill today. I recognize Senator Abrams.
Thank you, Representative Steinberg. I just want to be as clear as possible about my comments and my request to hold this bill right now. It was my understanding that, we have a lot of new members on this committee. We also have people who have seen different machinations of this bill. And I want to be very clear about my commitment to this concept. My commitment to passing this legislation has not wavered in any way. I just feel that at this time, it would be more beneficial if we had a clear understanding of where we were beginning and what we were starting with, so that we had a good public hearing for people, a bill for people to respond to, a bill for our committee to respond to, and that we were able to work out the best bill we possibly could. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm not ready to do that. I am absolutely ready to do that and very committed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Betts, followed by Representative D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a suggestion to make that maybe will be helpful in terms of moving this forward, and that is really dealing with as Senator Summers said, really dealing with the title of the bill. I myself am getting confused because I thought we were talking about vaccines. Now you're talking about immunizations. But really what I thought we're focused on was the idea that there was something in statute that allowed people for philosophical or religious reasons not having their children take that. I'm wondering, because an act concerning immunization is not the same as what we heard last time. I think we're playing kind of a word game. I would certainly be supportive of having it move forward if it really said what the intent of the bill is, which is basically to repeal the religious exemption as a reason for not taking a vaccine. That's at least clear, even if you don't have the specific language. That's at least clear as to what the real change is going to be in this proposed bill. So I would strongly recommend, because I would not, if I were in the public and I saw an act concerning immunizations, I would not necessarily presume or assume it's the same as was done last year. And if you want the public to respond to what's being proposed, I certainly would support the idea of whatever language you had in mind, have them respond to that, because that's fair to the public as opposed to reopening something that sounds like it's not going to change a lot. You have the basic language materially that you're going to try and move forward. I would think it would be fair to the public to say, this is what we're looking at and we'd like your feedback on. So those are my two suggestions. Most definitely the title, because I think that would be helpful. And then the idea of having language in there, I think would be effective in terms of what is the committee going to be looking at and what is the change going to be. So I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. We certainly can do better on the title. And now that we're going to afford ourselves a little time to do so, I take your point. But I would argue that given the number of emails we received and the petition, seems like the public's pretty well aware of what we were talking about. I don't really see any confusion at that point. But as long as we're being deliberate in the process of bringing this bill forward, let's get the title right as well. Representative D'Amico, did you still want to speak?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak for the second time. I don't want to belabor this, but I would like to warn my colleagues on the committee that I think what we're doing here is potentially tying the hands of the leadership of this committee. The job of the leadership is to bring forward bills, and then it's the job of the committee to hear testimony on the bills and to debate the bills and go through the whole process. I think I would agree with my colleague, Representative Linehan. We're slowing down the process. And look, Mr. Chair, we have 16 potential items on the list for today. You know, my colleagues and I could raise objections to any one of these 16 bills and really slow down the process. I think it's a bad precedent that we're setting here to have to go through this extended process that we're in the middle of right now for every single concept that's being put forward by the leadership of the committee. I think it's unfair to the leadership to put us through this, quite honestly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you for your support of the chairs. You know, I did not personally anticipate that we'd be having a conversation quite on this level, though certainly I intended to guarantee everybody they would know the bill we would bring to the public hearing before that happened, for their benefit and for the public's. To your point, Representative, we were following fairly standard process here. And as I said, I didn't think anybody in the public view had any real confusion about it, but we're going to go out of our way to make sure there is no such confusion. And what we're talking about is a matter of some days in the scheme of things. Remember, this is our first public health meeting. And as I said, I assure you that it will be our intent to bring this bill back to you no later than next week. So what we're talking about is roughly a week shift in the scheme of things. But you know, we would rather bend over backwards at this point to get everybody on the same page. Because when we get to the controversy, I don't want anybody talking about we didn't follow a good process. And that's why we will perhaps be a little bit more rigorous on this process than we would have been otherwise. Personally, I thought raising a concept would be just that straightforward. We all knew what we were talking about. But I agree with you, Representative, but we're going to give this a few more days or so to put something forward that everybody can take a look at. And therefore, there will be no confusion. There should be pretty much clarity. I don't expect agreement, but I expect clarity on what we're bringing forward in terms of intent. Representative Dauphiné.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all due respect, I was in a Children's Committee meeting yesterday with the good chair, Representative Linehan, and she held two bills for lack of clarity. So that's something that we do when we don't have clarity on a bill. So I would argue that we do need more clarity with regard to this bill. Thank you.
And I'm agreeing with you, Representative, and that's what we're going to do. So without further ado, we're going to hold this bill. And I ask all of you to stay tuned for a new, improved, and extremely clear title raised bill we will be bringing to you in the near future. And I'd like to move to the second item on the agenda, which I hope will not generate the same level of confusion. Now, this bill, for those of you who remember us from last year, was an accompanying bill which would require reimbursement to physicians, or I guess providers, for having an extended consultation with families to discuss their concerns about specific vaccines or their children's inoculation with vaccines, so as to have the conversation, which is very difficult to have in the current context of how medicine is practiced, where oftentimes the family is afforded a very narrow window to ask questions or for the physician or other provider to explain things. This is something that, from what I recall, was not particularly controversial. It might even be bipartisan, but the goal was to facilitate one of the weak points in the conversation about inoculation vis-a-vis medical exemptions and vaccine concerns, to facilitate a conversation. So even though that may not be captured in the title of the bill, I would submit that's pretty straightforward. And whether you're for or against the bill we've been talking about for too long, I would submit you might want to consider this bill is not that and might be worthy of consideration. I'm going to ask, do I have a motion to raise this bill as a concept?
I will move that as a concept.
And I second it.
And we have a moved and seconded.
I do have one comment just quickly. We are going to have to make a referral to insurance on this, I would assume.
Highly likely. And it's something that we made them aware of last year. So again, it should be pretty straightforward. But since this bill in some ways is germane to the bill we will be discussing, we wanted to start it in this committee. Senator Wong. Senator, we can't hear you.
Nope, I was muted. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that the time that we were given to the vaccine debate earlier, and hopefully the other bills will be a little more clear and non-controversial. But that being said, I also recognize that every one of these concepts are important, and we should have a better understanding of it moving forward before we even vote on it. And that I will offer to people that as they vote on these concepts, when we have these votes, that it is not a for certain yes or a no vote. It is, as Representative D'Amico brought up, it is to raise the concept. So I want to reiterate to the people listening that as we raise these issues, whether they're controversial or not, it may be an opportunity for us to hear more details about it, to have an open mind about it. So that's important for people listening to that. And with that said, I also want to be able to give other people a sense to voice their concerns about some of these concepts. So I would ask that on section 2 that we have a roll call vote, Mr. Chair.
We have a request for a roll call vote. Are there any other comments before we do so? If not, Madam Administrator, are we prepared to engage in a roll call vote?
Yes, we are.
Please commence.
Senator Abrams,
Senator Darty Abrams, yes.
Representative Steinberg,
Representative Steinberg, yes.
Senator Anwar,
Senator Anwar votes yes.
Senator Kushner,
Senator Kushner votes yes.
Representative Gilchrist,
Representative Gilchrist votes yes.
Senator Wong,
Senator Huang votes yes.
Senator Summers,
Senator Wong, I believe you have to be on camera as well.
I saw him.
Want to make
Yes,
sure
thank
you're-
you, Madam Chair. Yes, Senator Huang votes yes.
Senator Summers,
Senator Summers votes yes.
I need to see you, Senator Summers.
I'm here. Senator Summers votes yes.
Thank you. Representative Pettit,
Representative Petit votes yes.
Representative Arnone,
Representative Arnone votes yes.
Representative Berger Garvallo,
Representative Berger Gervallo votes yes.
Representative Betts,
Representative Betts votes yes.
Representative Carpino,
Representative Carpino votes yes.
Representative Cook,
Representative Cook votes yes.
Representative Dauphiné,
Representative Dauphiné votes yes.
Representative D'Amico,
Representative D'Amico votes yes.
Representative Elliott,
Senator Elliott votes yes.
Representative Foster,
Representative Foster votes yes.
Representative Django,
Representative Jenga votes yes.
Representative Green,
Representative Green votes yes.
Senator Haskell,
Senator Haskell votes yes.
Senator Casser,
Senator Casser votes yes.
Representative Carpus DeGraw,
Senator Cavros DeGraw votes yes.
Representative Kennedy, Representative Tardis Dietrich,
Representative Clarice Dietrich votes yes.
Representative Lenahan,
Representative Linehan votes yes.
Representative McCarthy,
Representative McCarthy votes yes.
Senator Moore,
Senator Moore votes yes.
Representative Parker,
Representative Parker votes yes.
Representative Ryan,
Representative Ryan votes yes.
Representative Scanlon, Representative Terziak,
Representative Terziak votes yes.
Representative Young,
Representative Young votes yes.
Representative Zupkis,
Representative Zupkis votes yes.
We're drawing with anticipation, Madam Administrator. How did it turn out?
21 voted, voting, and hold a minute, sorry. 31 voted yea, 2 absent and not voting.
Thank you.
Can
I'm
you-
glad we got that cleared up.
Can
Yeah, that
you,
was-
can you read the names again of the 2 people who didn't vote, just to make sure that they have the opportunity if somehow they got missed?
Representative Kennedy. Representative Scanlon.
Thank you.
Okay, then, that was an interesting exercise. Representative Kennedy is now here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kennedy voted yes. I apologize if you didn't hear me.
Well, thank you, Representative. And as I was saying, that was an interesting exercise. We just invested a fair bit of time on what turned out to be a unanimous vote. So let me just make 2 points based on that. First of all, we really don't need to do a roll call vote if we think that it's very clear on the outcome. And secondly, we did create a consent calendar. So as we move forward, and we still have a number of bills before us, I would advise everybody to consider those things. And that if you insist upon a roll call vote, we will do so, but we will be here for another couple hours. So let's think very carefully about whether that's something we really think we need to do. We want to honor the process, but I would hope that we reserve a roll call vote for those votes that may involve some level of disagreement. So congratulations, we've actually raised 1 bill, and now we might actually move forward to a second one. Are we all ready for that?
You're on mute. You're on mute, Representative Steinberg.
I've just confirmed I cannot use the space bar while I'm actually reading a PDF document in another place. So, lesson learned. Okay. Our next bill is an act concerning
You went back on mute.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, just a second.
I'm not going to use the space bar anymore. It's just not
Okay.
reliable. All right. The next up on our agenda is an act concerning Aiden dying, which I would hope everybody knows what's about, but for the benefit of new members in the public, I will attempt to extremely briefly summarize. This is a bill that was before the committee last year. It has been before the committee in a number of years. It has not changed dramatically over the years. Its intent is to afford people who have a terminal diagnosis of 6 months or less estimated to live to be afforded the opportunity to make the personal choice to end life on their own terms, involving a physician in assisting them to accomplish their own wishes. It is a bill which includes a significant number of hurdles before that action could be exercised by any individual, requiring the involvement of not one, but a physician or physicians on 2 different occasions, and as much certainty as we can provide that the individual is not being coerced, is acting on their own behalf with their own desire. And we are talking about an extremely small subset of the population that may have availed themselves of palliative care or they may have considered hospice care, but they are making a personal choice as to how they want to manage their last days of living and to go out on their own terms. That's the gist of the bill. Again, I encourage anybody who has forgotten it or the bill is new to them to look at the summary from last year. We may make some very small adjustments from what we did last time, but the bill is, I would argue, over 90% going to be identical to what we raised last year. Do I have a motion to raise this bill?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded by 2 senators. We'll open it up for comment. Representative Zupkis.
You're on mute, Representative.
Thank you. I
Okay.
knew I was trying, that was what that meant. I'm trying to get off.
That's fine.
I will just lend to the comments that I had before for earlier when we started this conversation about the two controversial bills. I just really believe this bill has been before us before and didn't go anywhere. It is not of urgency at this time, especially with COVID and what's going on with people dying. And so I will not be voting. I will be voting no to raise this because I don't believe in this virtual reality that we're in. It is the place, nor is it the urgency to raise this at this time. I feel I sat through the hearing last time in public health, and I know it is a very controversial, and a lot of people came to the Capitol to testify, and I believe that we owe that to them as opposed to doing it virtually.
Thank you, Representative. I guess we're back to the same old issue of whether or not we can conduct business on a virtual basis, and I would argue we can. Representative Senator Summers, followed by Representative Dauphiné.
Yes, I'm going to be voting no on this. We have heard this bill repeatedly over the last few sessions, and it has never come out of committee for a vote. So we have put people through a public hearing. It has never been raised to vote on in committee. I cannot personally think of a worse time to bring up this bill in the middle of COVID, when we have thousands of people on that are sick from this disease, that we have lost in nursing homes, that potentially could be on ventilators. So I'm a strong no on raising this once again. I know this is personal for many people. They want to hear this, but I am a no on this one. Thank you.
Appreciate your point of view. Representative Dauphiné.
I just wanted to add, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I completely agree with my colleagues, Representative Zupkis and Senator Summers. I don't think this virtual hearing is appropriate for this kind of testimony, and I think we should be listening to each and every individual in a different manner. So I will be a no on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I assure you we will listen to everybody who chooses to testify. And we are very hopeful, based upon our experience in special sessions last year, that we have a methodology that will afford people as good an opportunity as we possibly can under the circumstances. Senator Haskell.
Thank you very much, Chairman Steinberg. I'm brand new to this committee, and I just wanted to thank the leadership for raising this important bill. I want to respectfully push back on the notion that the issue isn't urgent for the constituents in my district who are suffering from a terminal illness or watching their loved ones suffer under a terminal diagnosis. There is real urgency to this bill, and I can't seem to wrap my head around the notion that we can conduct business virtually on things that we support, but we can't conduct business virtually on things that we don't support. I don't understand that argument, and I'm grateful that although this is a difficult issue, and although the committee has taken many, many steps to put in place protections around this controversial item, I'm really grateful that the leadership is taking up the mantle on this issue and continuing to fight for it even under these circumstances, because I know so many constituents in my district appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too want to support the raising of this concept. I've received quite a few emails, as I'm sure other members have, and there seems to be quite a bit of misinformation on what the proposal we are considering is and the information that's out there. So as someone else who is new to this committee, I look forward to having this conversation and think that certainly this is a forum in which we can have that virtually, and do actually come from the mindset that having us via Zoom in some ways gives people more access to the process. So thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you, Representative, for the added emphasis of your background noise. I am going to represent Tony Wong, but first I'm going to play prognosticator. I'm going to believe that Senator Wong is going to ask for us to take a roll call vote. Let's see if I'm right.
Well, you are indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also has the chair and what is it, the Johnny Carson bit, Carmack? So yes, indeed, I would like to ask for a roll call vote. But before we do that, I would offer my thoughts on this. Not being a member, but sitting through the committee hearing and the emotionality that existed in a in-person meeting, I also feel that this is an issue that's going to evoke a lot of emotion. And along with Senator Haskell, we and yourself, we've heard from many residents in the area, but we have also heard from many others in differing viewpoints. And that really is democracy at play. And we will have that dialogue and conversation. But I think it is truly important, and for Senator Haskell and Representative Steinberg, when we talk about their thoughts and support of this, it ultimately sits with an individual's personal rights. And if you are articulating that, I hope that you will remain consistent in other areas of debate and respecting individuals' personal rights and liberties as it relates to what they want to do with their body. So I think it's a point very well taken that we have to demonstrate a degree of consistency, a degree of fair applications in law, and not pick and choose. So I welcome this debate. It will be very emotional. It is a draining exercise, but that's what we signed up for this committee to do, the good work that's necessary, as the chairs have said. But I want to emphasize again, if those are advocating for this bill articulate the rights and principles of an individual's right to make personal decisions relative to their body and their personal liberties, we have to be conscious of a consistency in that application and everything else we consider in legislation. But again, I look forward to a roll call vote on this. And thank you for being a very, very insightful, and I hope to use your crystal ball for other future prognostications as well, Mr. Chair.
Well, I've got the winner in the third race at Aqueduct, if you'd like. To your point, Representative, I hope we'd all be consistent in how we register our philosophy. And I will tell you, from my perspective, I will always defend individual freedoms for people to make the choice with their own bodies, unless, of course, those decisions put others at risk. And I think that oftentimes that context and those distinctions are important when we talk about individual freedoms, because not getting too philosophical here, our nation was founded both on individual freedoms and as a nation of laws where we take care of one another. So both those things should be taken into account. Representative Berger-Gavallo, followed by Representative Cook.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very brief. Every single email that I have received in opposition to this concept, this bill has had at least one point, if not more, of inaccurate information. This is an opportunity to correct that and to send that misinformation that's been circulating to where it belongs, and to be able to put what's real and what is being called for out there. I think we owe it to our constituents to get that information out.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and not to belabor, but I also want to make it noted too that just because we support a concept to be heard for a public hearing does not mean that we support the concept to be voted on at the end of the decision-making process. So as I had stated earlier about being a building for the people, I vote to listen to it once again, but it does not mean in no means that I will necessarily be supporting it. And I just hope that everybody that's sitting here and trying to debate what to do with this recognizes that we are elected to listen to all people, not just certain people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. That's a wonderful summary of both the considerations on this bill, but more importantly, our process. And let us all take what Representative Cook said to heart, to listen to everybody, to do our homework, to try to assemble as much evidence as possible so that we can ideally go beyond hearsay and allegations and come as close as we can to understanding merits. That is the goal of this committee. We're actually moving along that path on a very slow pace. But unless there are any other further comments, I would ask Madam Administrator to conduct a roll call vote, please.
Senator Abrams?
Senator Darty Abrams votes yes.
Representative Steinberg?
Representative Steinberg votes yes.
Senator Anwar?
Senator Saud Anwar votes yes.
Senator Kushner?
Senator Kushner votes yes.
Representative Gilchrist?
Representative Gilchrist votes yes.
Senator Wong?
Senator Huang votes yes.
Senator Summers,
Senator Summers votes no.
Representative Pettit,
Representative Pettit votes no.
Representative Arnone,
Representative Arnone votes yes.
Representative Berger Givalio,
Representative Berger Travallo votes yes.
Representative Betts,
Representative Betts votes yes.
Representative Carpino,
Pino votes yes.
Representative Cook,
Representative Cook votes yes.
Representative Dauphiné,
Representative Dauphiné votes no.
Representative D'Amico,
Representative D'Amico votes yes.
Representative Elliott,
Elliott votes yes.
Representative Elliott,
Josh, you weren't on this, Representative Elliott, you weren't on the screen.
Weird. Okay. Yep. Rep. Elliott votes yes.
Representative Foster,
Representative Foster votes yes.
Representative Django,
Representative Jenga votes no.
Representative Green,
Representative Green votes yes.
Senator Haskell,
Senator Haskell votes yes.
Senator Castle,
Senator Kasser votes yes.
Representative Cabras DeGraw,
Representative Cabras DeGraw votes yes.
Representative Kennedy,
Representative Kennedy votes yes.
Representative Titus Beecher,
Representative Claire Dietrich votes no.
Representative Lenahan,
Representative Linehan votes yes.
Representative McCarthy,
Representative McCarty votes no.
Senator Moore,
Senator Moore votes yes.
Representative Parker,
Representative Parker votes yes.
Representative Ryan, Representative Scanlon, Representative Terziak,
Representative Terziak votes yes.
Representative Young,
Representative Young votes yes.
Representative Zupkis,
Representative Zupkis votes no.
Beverly,
Representative Ryan,
I vote yes.
Do you want to go through the list again to make sure anybody hasn't shown up besides?
Representative Scanlon, total voting 32, 25 yeas, 7 nays, 1 absent not voting.
So I take it the motion carries. All right, we have raised that bill. Moving along. The next bill on the list is an act regarding telehealth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, This is a concept bill. It is intentionally a concept bill because of many of the things we've discussed today. Explicitly, we've learned a lot about many things related to healthcare during the pandemic, and perhaps no subject have we learned more than in telehealth. This is a subject that I think will be of interest to all of us because it involves patient access under difficult pandemic circumstances, but it also reflects a lot of learning and experience that telehealth can be part of the healthcare landscape in a fashion that has not been the case in the state of Connecticut. I should add that many things we have learned about telehealth may not involve legislation that will fall neatly into the Public Health Committee, despite everyone's expectations. Some legislation will certainly fall in the Insurance Committee where it comes to reimbursement, maybe the Human Services Committee with regard to Medicaid reimbursement, and almost certainly the Appropriations Committee, because some of the things we may contemplate may involve money. So I'm begging everyone's consideration at this point to move forward with a concept bill to afford us the opportunity in public hearing to hear from all sorts of different people, frontline healthcare workers, people who have benefited from telehealth, experts from other states, and that we will make this bill very clear, but perhaps we will not have a bill with the kind of clarity we've discussed earlier until we've had the advantage of a public hearing. With that, I ask whether or not we have a motion to raise this concept
So
bill.
moved.
Moved by
Second.
Representative Young, seconded by
Tertiak.
good old Representative Tertiak, not that you're particularly old. We will now get into comments, starting with Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if you have a crystal ball, but I would offer to put this on the consent calendar and begin adding bills to that.
Thank you for modeling the behavior I hope will dominate the remainder of the bills we have before us. Are there any objections to putting this bill on the consent calendar? Can't hear you, Tony.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity. And I hope that in the future with other bills that are of great benefit to the community addressing the crisis of COVID, as I said earlier, that we will have bipartisan consensus and that we will have representation from both the majority and the minority in sending a clear and unified message that we are working together on most of the issues that affect the people in the state related to public health. So I'm glad to start the consent calendar. And I don't know if you read that on your crystal ball, Mr. Chair.
You had me on that one. I'm going to have to polish it up a little bit, but thank you for your sentiments. Any other comments, any objections? If not, we will place this on the consent calendar. I think we just did that. Let us move forward. Next up on our list is an act concerning opioids. Once again, a concept bill. For those of you who have not been on the committee before or members of the public, this committee, not exclusively, so is the Insurance Committee, raised an opioids bill for many years running. And I would submit that we need to continue to do so, even though we've done some good work, because the problem remains. If we look at the statistics, some of them may be COVID related. We still have a significant problem with opioids here in the state of Connecticut, leading to a lot of deaths and a lot of really tragic stories. And I have reason to believe that if we raise a concept bill and have a public hearing, some new thoughts, particularly with this scourge of fentanyl, will come to us and that we will have specific legislation to bring forward. And on that note, I'd like to recognize Senator Anwar. You're muted, Senator.
Senator Anwar, we move to.
So you were simply moving that the bill?
Yes,
that was very straightforward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any comments with regard to this concept bill?
I'd ask that we put it on the consent calendar.
I ask if there are any objections to putting this bill on the consent calendar. Seeing none, so moved. It is now on the consent calendar. We will continue to move along. Well, we seem to be on a roll with some interesting concept bills. The next up is an act concerning suicide prevention. I know some of you have participated in calls and virtual webinars on this subject, either this year or last year. We have done a modestly good job with trying to identify those at risk and put programs in place, particularly support. But I think we also recognize there's so much more that we can do. And in fact, we can learn from other states. Many states have proceeded further than we have in moving forward with some really well-proven solutions, or at least contributors to mitigating suicides. I will alert you that there will be additional ongoing opportunities to learn more about suicide prevention, and that while this is a concept bill, I imagine by the time we reach a public hearing, we will have a number of different possible considerations to offer you. I'd like to hand it off to Senator Abrams, who has been intimately involved with this particular issue.
Thank you, Representative Steinberg. I think you said exactly what needed to be said. Certainly mental health issues have been particularly peaked during this time, but this is something that we had been working on previously. There is a summit this Friday. If you have not already gotten the invitation, I'll make sure that it gets sent to the entire committee and encourage you all to participate. It's something that we really need to be making sure we're doing the very best we can in our state to prevent suicide. Thank you.
In fact, I believe it starts right after our committee meeting on Friday, presuming we finished our committee meeting in a somewhat more expeditious fashion than we have demonstrated today. So,
I'd also like to make a motion that we move this bill and place it on the consent calendar.
That's a very timely motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I recognize Representative Pettit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This may be a few seconds premature, but I think it would be reasonable to proceed with the remainder of bills going on consent. I don't know if we can do them en masse or we need to go one by one, but I think we should be able to place the rest of the bills on consent, sir.
Thank you, Representative. I would hope that be the case, but we've already heard from Representative Tersiak about his reservations of one of those bills. So I can't say that uniformly. I will make every effort to move this along. So are there any objections for putting this on the consent calendar? Once, twice, if not, so moved. It's on the consent calendar. An act concerning air quality in schools. This is a bill that we did have last year. Obviously didn't have a chance to have a public hearing or vote on it. In discussion with the chairs and the rankings, we have discussed potentially even broadening it further to environmental issues in schools that may or may not be explicitly related to air, but this is something we definitely want to make sure that we address. I think many of us have experienced in our own districts with some serious issues relating to school environmental contamination. We hope that this would actually stimulate a very constructive public hearing where we can hear about some of the problems that our schools have had and see if we can construct a bill that would address some of the concerns, at the very least, our ability to monitor conditions so that we can highlight a problem before it becomes very serious. Do I have a motion to raise this bill?
So moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Michelle Cook seconds.
Moved and seconded. Representative Terziak.
Thank you very much. I'd like to support this bill, and as comment to a previous remark, although I have serious concerns about another bill on the agenda, I don't object to that bill being placed on the consent calendar so that we can discuss the concept. I'm fine with moving the rest of the calendar as a consent calendar. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative, for your magnanimity. We will address this bill in the first place because we have a motion on the floor. Are there any objections to putting it on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would now ask all members of the committee to take a look at the remaining agenda.
Representative Steinberg, I'd like to make a motion to place, I believe it's through 16. Would that be correct?
That would be correct.
On the consent calendar?
We have a motion to put items 8
I
through
second
16 on
that.
the consent
Senator
calendar.
Senator Anwar, second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Senator Wong.
I would be supportive of that, but I also wanted to have an opportunity to address a couple of the particular bills. So through you, Mr. Chair, would that be an opportunity afforded to various members?
I'm trying to think from a process standpoint how we can actually have the conversation. I guess we could do that. What I will do is I'm glad to briefly summarize any of the bills that are being moved for consent calendar so that all members of the committee can have comfort level and clarity on what those bills entail. So if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask a question about a specific bill under consideration for the consent calendar, I would be glad to try to answer. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Chairman Steinberg. I just want to make a brief comment. I am in favor of this consent calendar and will vote yes on it, but I do have a concern about allowing medical assistants to administer vaccines. I'm prepared to go to hearing on this, but I just wanted to note my concern about this particular concept and whether or not it will entail enough training and enough professionalism to make sure that vaccines are properly administered. I know there are a lot of views on this. I'm looking forward to the public hearing on it, and I'm voting to support it going to a public hearing, but it doesn't mean I will vote for it in the end. I didn't say that real smoothly, but I just wanted to record that view.
Thank you, Senator. Obviously, you're not the only one who has some concerns about the bill. I will say that 49 other states allow this, and it does reflect the reality of actual practice in much of the state. So I think it is worthy for at least having a hearing. Senator Wong, followed by Representative D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with your allowance, I wanted to make a comment on item number 10 that was placed on the consent calendar. I want to thank the chairs for raising this issue, and particularly also in a public forum in raising the importance of this issue, and the leadership of this committee in the past and passing the vaping regulations. I was somewhat disappointed that we weren't able to join the leadership in articulating a truly bipartisan and full-throated committee advocacy of this important issue. I think for us to place this on consent is a public statement that Democrats and Republicans on the leadership and on the rank and file support the idea of addressing flavors and the electronic vaping consideration. So I would hope that in the future, as we elaborate and articulate some of the unify ideas, we may not always agree, but I hope that in the future that the ranking members and some of our colleagues on both sides of the aisles are present to articulate a unified message. That being said, I also wanted to maybe pivot a little bit when we say we are so focused in regards to opiates and flavored cigarettes and vaping and the real consideration of public health. But at the whole same other time, we're considering the legalization of marijuana. So we again, I ask for consistency in our applications and policy and not justify one versus the other. So I look forward to the consent on this, but I wanted to make a public statement that Democrats and Republicans support these kind of issues, and I hope we'll work together in the future on them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Senator. We do strive for consistency. We have our human frailties, and we don't always achieve that, but it is certainly our objective. And I concur with you, and we will be sure to afford every legislator ample opportunity to express their support or concerns about any bill. We're at the very beginning of the process with the vaping flavors bill, the tobacco flavors bill. And there'll be, as I said, many occasions in which everyone will get an opportunity to express their enthusiasm for or against. Representative D'Amico.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. In that vein, in following what you had just said, I just wanted to remind my colleagues that we are raising concepts, we are not raising bills, and that I would suggest that in the interest of saving time and also in the interest of protocol, that we save remarks for the appropriate time, which is after the bills have been written and gone to public hearing, and then when we have a debate, that's the appropriate time to discuss the merits and shortcomings of the bills and to amend the bills. I guess we've talked about it a few times today, but I would suggest that it would be more appropriate to have all these discussions later on in the process, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Representative. You echo my thoughts in many ways. That has been the process for a long time. I was laboring under the misapprehension that that was the way we were operating currently. I think that we are bending over backwards, given the special circumstances of this session, to afford everybody a chance to speak. I would love to get into a little bit of a rhythm, a little bit of a routine where we raise issues of merits of the bill or get into questions or concerns at a time in which we're actually discussing the bill. But I also want to defer to my colleagues that they feel strongly about their desire to comment. We'll learn as we go along here. Representative McCarty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I may just simply suggest, and I have certainly no issue with going 8 through 16 on the consent agenda, but just for transparency's sake and for our public, would you just be able to name the concepts without, I'm not going to belabor anything with discussion on each one, but just for transparency, because as comments are being made, I think it would help with clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I think that's a great suggestion. So bear with me as I read out the bills. Item 8 is an act allowing medical assistance to administer vaccines. This is a bill we've had in the past. Number 9, an act concerning tuition reimbursement for healthcare providers desiring to help with both hiring and retention of critical healthcare providers. Item 10, an act prohibiting the sale of flavored cigarettes, tobacco products, electronic nicotine delivery systems, and vapor products. That's what we were referring to earlier. This would be sort of a sequel to the bill we passed a couple of years ago, banning vaping products for those under the age of 21. Item 11, an act requiring exertional heat illness training for coaches. This is a bill championed by Representative Claritas Ditria, and I'm sure she'd be glad to comment on it, but it's a bill she's been working on for a while, and I think it's got merit. 12, an act concerning the recruitment and retention of healthcare providers in the state. Again, another recruitment and retention bill, recognizing we have some real access issues in some certain specialties and even in primary care, and we want to see if we can address that. Item 13, an act concerning the provision of food and beverages in funeral homes. This is a bill which has come up to us before. There are definitely more than one point of view on the subject, but we want to afford another hearing. 14, an act concerning the recommendations of the Office of Health Strategy regarding various revisions to facility fee statute. This is obviously an Office of Health Strategy bill, which does get into some revisions that will facilitate the Office of Health Strategy moving forward with this mission, which we can discuss further in the context of a hearing. 15, an act concerning the recommendations of the Office of Health Strategy regarding various revisions to the Community Benefits Program statute. Community benefits is something I think we will want to discuss this session. It's an opportunity area, and the Office of Health Strategy has some thoughts that would benefit that particular outcome. And number 16, an act concerning various revisions to the statutes concerning the Department of Developmental Services. This is obviously a DDS bill, which has a number of elements to it, which we probably won't get into right now, but we do typically raise agency bills as they request, and then we have the conversation in the context of the public hearing and the subsequent committee meeting. So I hope that suffices to address virtually everybody's concern, but as I see Representative Claritas Ditria would like to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the committee for raising this heat illness bill for coaches. I think it's something very important for our student athletes. And as most of you know, heat illness and heat death is 100% preventable. So again, thank
you for raising this concept.
Thank you, Representative, for your hard work on this bill, and I look forward to having a good discussion about it. Now, I assume we have to vote on the consent calendar because these are all under item 3. I don't think we can do item 4 under the consent calendar. So, Madam Administrator, let's do.
Can we do a voice vote on the consent calendar, or do we need to do?
Are there any objections to doing the consent calendar by voice vote?
No objections.
You're speaking very categorically, sir.
Yep.
Okay. If not, I will ask all those in favor of adopting the consent calendar.
Just a minute, Representative. First, we have to make sure everyone puts themselves on camera and unmutes themselves.
Thank you for that distinction. We got to see all of your faces. You have to unmute yourself. Try to keep the noise in the background down. Do I see everyone? Do I see Timmy and Johnny? And okay, that's a romper room quote, which is
Senator Wang has his hand up.
Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a procedural question. The fact that we're doing a consent calendar, as I remember it, isn't it usually the clerk or someone who would have to read all the bills on the consent calendar for us to constitute a vote to be sure that there's clarification? I just want to be sure that there's procedural process followed.
That sounds very familiar, Senator. I think that's actually the right process. So why don't we have the administrator read off the items that are on the consent calendar for a voice vote approbation?
Thank you.
Madam Administrator.
Under section 3 of the agenda, item 8, item 9, item 10, item 11, item 12, item 13, item 14, item 15, and item 16.
So now, if there's no objection.
We're items 4, 5, and 6, and 7 on the consent calendar as well, Madam Administrator.
Yes, they are.
So let's just try that one more time.
Items 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. I see Representative D'Amico has something to say.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, again, far be it from me to belabor the proceedings, but since we've gone this far and taken so many roll call votes, I wonder if it wouldn't be appropriate to consult with LCO to make sure that it's appropriate to take a voice vote on a consent calendar. I don't know the answer to that question, but I sure would like to know the answer to that question. Thank you.
Hi, Eileen Lawler with LCO. Yes, that's fine. A voice vote is appropriate.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I'm good. You know, we're doing some of the things for the first time this way. It's worth our while to make sure we're doing it right. We'll know better for next time. So all those in favor.
Take yourself off mute, please. Take yourself off mute. Make sure you're on camera. Thank you.
Everybody needs off mute. We got to see your faces just for a second. All right. All those in favor of adopting the consent calendar as stipulated, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? If not, the consent calendar has carried. Congratulations, everyone. That was a big chunk of business. It only took us an hour and a half to get there. All right. Moving along to item 4 on the agenda. Proposed bill to be drafted as a committee bill. This is proposed bill, Senate Bill 1, an act equalizing comprehensive access to mental, behavioral, and physical health care in response to the pandemic. Now, merely by noting that this is indicated as Senate Bill 1, this is considered a bill of great interest. I will hand it off to Senator Abrams if she'd like to comment further.
Steinberg?
Yes, Madam.
I did not see Senator Kasser and Representative Elliott when we voted.
So going back
I don't know if it makes a difference.
Since neither of them have demurred, I'm not sure that that is necessarily a problem, but we would prefer if the two missing legislators were prepared to show their faces and indicate their inclinations.
Aye.
And who are you?
Rep. Elliott.
Thank you.
And Senator Castor votes yes, too.
Thank you both. That clears up that. Now we may move on to item 4 of the agenda, Proposed Bill, Senate Bill 1. And as I was saying, this is a prominent bill, and I will ask Senator Abrams if she has any comments.
My only comments would be what you said, which is this is Senate Bill 1. We saw through this pandemic that there were certainly incredible issues and challenges that came to the forefront when it came to mental, behavioral, and physical health care in our state, and the equal opportunity for comprehensive access. So this bill is being drafted to try to eliminate some of those challenges, to make it easier for people to have access to good health care and in all of those areas. And I won't belabor the point because I want to be.
So moved. The Senator
So
Anwar,
I
so
guess I'm
moved.
asking for a motion. So moved. Do I
There's
have a
some
second?
questions. I think
Well,
there might.
let's get the motion in the second, and then we'll address questions. We have been moved by Senator Anwar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Representative Young. We will now entertain comments. Senator Summers, followed by Representative Betts.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Okay, so I have a couple questions. First of all, this is not a bill that we screened during screening. But secondly, right now this is a placeholder because there's no language for us to look at. We're raising it as a bill, not a concept. But I really think that this should be a public health committee bill because the things that are touched on in the description are things that we have all talked about as far as mental health, behavioral health, physical health, whether it be access through telehealth that we are going to be discussing. So this, again, public health and these types of things through the pandemic is not partisan. And looking at this bill, it's clearly a placeholder. We would like to make sure that the entire Public Health Committee raise this as a concept, and many of the things that we're discussing are going to be included with things that have access during the pandemic and beyond the pandemic. So I just wanted to say that, our caucus has discussed this. This was added to the agenda. It was not something we discussed, and we really think that it should come out as a committee bill as far as a hearing and a concept bill rather than what we've seen here. We don't have the language yet. So I just wanted to make that point.
I think that's a valid point, Senator. This is obviously a bill that's going to get a lot of attention. And as we have with other bills, the chair has promised to make sure that all committee members are afforded an opportunity to see the specifics. And I also take your point. This covers a broad swath of things that are very important to us. Really covers almost the entire waterfront. So it conceivably could be an important vessel in which many things that we'll discuss this session may end up. But this is a public health bill. It is for us to consider and for us to consider amending as we see necessary. So I think it will stimulate the conversation we need to have on a variety of subjects. Representative Betts.
Can I ask
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So why are we not raising this as a concept bill then, rather than, I feel like we're getting two different conflicting information. This is really a placeholder bill that we are going to be hearing as a bill, not a concept. But on the other hand, we have language for a bill that we're not hearing the bill, we're hearing it as a concept. So I would suggest that we hear this as a concept bill that touches on the mental access, mental care access, physical care access, and behavioral care access during, whether it's during a pandemic or moving forward, that it should really be raised as a concept rather than a specific bill. That's just my.
I take your point. I'm a pragmatist. I think we're going to end up in the same place one way or the other. And certainly a bill of this import and magnitude will have lots of conversation, not only in screening, but in a public hearing and subsequently. So I would like to move it forward because we're going to have a robust conversation where all members of the committee have ample opportunity to weigh in and to offer potential sections to the bill. Representative Betts, followed by Senator Wong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to make two brief points. One is this is far more than dealing with COVID. Ever since Sandy Hook, I know it's been recommended ever since that time that we really focus on mental health in the system and how overwhelmed it is, how it's underfunded. We don't have enough providers. So as we take this up, I truly hope the committee understands that we're not just talking about COVID. We're talking about much broader things that affect children, older people, people who've been bullied, victims of abuse. I really think we need to be clear that it isn't just COVID that's led to this. We've been really doing it for a very, very long time. And it's my hope that we'll really stay committed to doing that. The second thing is, after we've done that, I would really hope public health would make this a multi-year commitment whereby we can not only say what needs to be done, and there are a lot of groups out there doing work like the children behavioral group, but we need to measure the progress, the success, or the impediments of this mental health policy that's going to be emerging. So I'm very pleased about this, but I hope it's not a 1 year and done. I really think we need to make this a priority for everybody in this state. I don't think it's a partisan issue whatsoever, but I do think it's something that's real. It's been serious for a long time and well overdue to try and address it. So I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Very well said, Representative. I think you make a really critical point. So much of what we're very sensitized to relate to the pandemic, but many of the things we have learned have exposed longstanding issues, often related to funding, across the spectrum of healthcare here in the state of Connecticut. And even though when we look at the state on a national basis, we're ranked very high in terms of healthcare, we also recognize that having gone through over a decade of deficits have meant cuts or no increases to many line items on healthcare. And this is an opportunity to have that conversation. So I thank you, Representative, for reminding us that we need to keep it in the broadest context if we're going to address some really longstanding problems. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am in full support of raising this concept. And isn't it wonderful that we saved the best for last, that we are addressing a bill related to the COVID pandemic. It is going to be an omnibus bill, and obviously in denoting it as Senate Bill number 1, it kind of affirms it that the Senate Democrats of all sponsoring it deemed it as the utmost priority. I want to be on the record as a Senate Republican, and many of my other colleagues in the Republican Party, that we fully support the idea of a comprehensive plan for behavioral and physical health care in response to the pandemic. And I would have hoped that that in our discussions to craft a plan that we include all the shareholders, Democrat and Republican. And I hope this is an opportunity for us in this committee to start practicing the fact that a new step forward. We just inaugurated a new president, that as we go forth and address the public health concerns, particularly as it relates to this pandemic, that we are united in a common message to solving the critical problem that we have. So I would ask that when we look at Senate Bill number 1, that as we get more language, one, that the ranking Republican members sit on those discussions and offer our input, and that the future languages and presentation of such said strategy incorporates both parties, all shareholders in this discussion. I will fully support this message, but I am concerned that if we get one-sided message as the basis of one-party rule, we may not have the best solution for a critical issue that confronts this community and this state. So I will be fully supportive of this, but I would throw caution the fact that to the leadership and to the crafters of this, that we incorporate all shareholders, and that the Republican ranking members and its constituents and members get a voice in this important solution to the COVID pandemic. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Very good point. It's certainly my expectation that we will encourage good ideas from all quarters. I think that's the best way to solve problems. And it's my expectation that everyone will be involved with this bill because of its import. Representative Dauphiné.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to reiterate, and I share with my colleague, Senator Summers' concerns about this bill. It has no language, so it really should be a concept bill without any language. That's really what it is. So that's what I would just add to that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You know, I'm perhaps a little bit less disturbed or concerned because I know that this will be a bill in which all members of the committee participate and will be as transparent as possible. I'm going to ask everyone's indulgence so we can get to that point and encourage everyone to make sure that if they have thoughts or even if they have concerns, that they communicate it to the chairs of the rankings so that the bill that eventually comes out of this committee reflects the good work of all of our thoughts and really goes a long ways to solving those problems. I actually have great confidence in this. This is the way we roll in the Public Health Committee, and I think we're going to end up there. So thank you for those comments. If there are no further comments, dare I ask for a voice vote on this bill? Does anyone object to a voice vote?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I would ask for a roll call vote to reflect the unanimous vote on the record that Democrats and Republicans support this important concept.
It helps the difference between a roll call and
All right, we'll put a point of emphasis on this bill, and as quickly as we may proceed, we will go forward with a roll call vote. Madam Administrator.
Abrams,
Senator Darty Abrams votes yes.
Representative Steinberg,
Representative Steinberg votes yes.
Senator Anwar,
Senator Anwar votes yes.
Senator Kushner,
Senator Kushner votes yes.
Representative Gilchrist,
Representative Gilchrist votes yes.
Senator Wong,
Senator Huang votes yes.
Senator Summers,
Senator Summers votes yes.
Senator Wong,
Me again? Senator Huang votes yes again.
Representative Pettit,
Representative Pettit votes yes.
Representative Arnone,
Representative Arnone votes yes.
Representative Berger Givalio,
Representative Berger Givallo votes yes.
Representative Betts,
Representative Betts votes yes.
Representative Carpino,
Representative Carpino votes yes.
Representative Cook,
Representative Cook votes yes.
Representative Dauphiné,
Representative Dauphiné votes yes.
Representative D'Amico,
Representative D'Amico votes yes.
Representative Elliott,
Rep. Elliott votes yes.
Representative Foster,
Representative Foster votes yes.
Representative Django, Representative Green,
Representative Green votes yes.
Senator Haskell, Representative Cabras de Graaf,
Yes. Representative Cabras de Graaf votes yes.
Senator Castle,
Senator Castor votes yes.
Representative Kennedy,
Representative Kennedy votes yes.
Representative Caritas Dietrich,
Representative Claire Distria votes yes.
Representative Lenahan,
Representative Linehan votes yes.
Representative McCarthy,
Representative McCarty votes yes.
Senator Moore,
Senator Moore votes yes.
Representative Parker,
Representative Parker votes yes.
Representative Ryan,
Representative Ryan votes yes.
Representative Scanlon, Representative Terziak,
Representative Terziak votes yes.
Representative Young,
Young votes yes.
Representative Zupkis,
Representative Zupkis votes yes.
Representative Django,
Representative Jenga votes yes.
Senator Haskell,
Senator Haskell votes yes.
Great, thank
total voting 32, those voting yea 32, absent and not voting 1.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. The motion passes. I believe this concludes the raising bills part of our calendar. I will remind everyone that our next meeting is this Friday, the 22nd at 9 a.m., where we will probably be talking about a bunch of more bills. And I want to thank you all for your patience and understanding today. It's been a learning experience. We knew we'd have some spirited conversation on a number of these bills, and I thank everybody's for their civility and their respect for one another. Thank you again. We will see you all on Friday.
Representative Steinberg, are we going to keep the votes open for an hour? I believe there's one member that hasn't voted.
The vote, I don't think I can because I announced the vote already. Check with Eileen.
I believe that because you've announced the tally that it's final now, but I'm not positive. I can double check and let you know for certain.
Please, thanks.
Sure.
I think it's something we're going to need to make clear as we go forward, but it's conceivable that that one individual will have missed his or her opportunity to register their point of view. So we can hang on for another minute, but I imagine the vast majority of you are ready to move on. Unless Eileen has an answer for us straight away, we'll give it another minute and then we'll decide how best to bring this to closure.
While we're waiting, could you just please, when is the next meeting? Friday at what time?
9 a.m.
Thank you.
And I'll use that as an opportunity to remind everybody that subsequent to that meeting, which we hope will only take an hour, we invite you all to participate in the suicide prevention conversation we're going to be having. Eileen, you have a comment?
I do, yes. No, the vote is now closed.
All right, well, in the future, maybe we won't announce it. I'll take that on myself. I will discuss it with the individual who missed that opportunity. On that basis, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. And without, Representative Betts has a question.
No, I don't. I'm finished, sir.
All right, well, you got the last word. We are adjourned.
Bye.